Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Final Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. It's Tuesday, time to talk about some new releases coming out this Friday, April 18th. There's a little over 300 albums coming out this week. I've got 10 on my list for today. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. Like I said in the intro, there's a little over 300 albums coming out this week, but I'm only going to talk about 10 of them on the show today. So if there's something you're looking forward to I'll have on here, make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing. And like always, if you're unable to find these in your local brick and mortar stores, they should all be available online. I'll put links down below in the comment section for them. You can also always go over to the Vinyl Den store on Amazon. I've got all the pre-orders on there, new releases, there's deals on records, all sorts of cool stuff to check out. The first album I got on the list for this week is the latest album from Childish Gambino. This is Bando Stone in the New World. So this came out back in July of last year. It was his fifth studio album. It's going to run about $34. This was the follow-up to 31-15-20, which was, of course, reissued as At a Vista earlier in 2024. So Donald Glover said this is going to be the last album under the Childish Gambino name, and this is the soundtrack for the upcoming movie, the same name, which is going to be starring Donald Glover. It's also going to be his directorial debut. I'm not sure of the release date of the movie yet, but I like pretty much everything else that Donald Glover has acted in. So, I'll definitely watch the movie when it comes out. I have not listened to this album yet, even though it's been out for almost a year now. I know it was met with a lot of really great reviews, even though the critics were rather critical of the lack of cohesiveness for the album. Did win a Grammy, hit number 16 on the Billboard 200, so commercially it was a successful album, but I need to, like I said, I need to go back through and listen to it. I don't think I've listened to At a Vista yet either, so I definitely need to check out both those last two projects from him. You've also got Neil Young Coastal soundtrack coming out this week. So this is the soundtrack for his upcoming documentary. It's going to be about $29. So the new soundtrack and this documentary follow Neil on his 2023 tour of the West Coast. It's got 11 tracks on there, spans his 60 plus years in music. Something I didn't realize was this documentary is directed by Daryl Hannah, who of course married Neil back in 2018. And the big thing about this tour in particular was this was Neil's return to touring post-COVID. The thing I really like about the soundtrack is some of the songs that they picked for it. This isn't like a greatest hits compilation played live. There's definitely some deeper cuts from Neil's career on here. There's some stuff that hasn't been played live in a very long time. Some of them have never been played live. It's one I probably won't pick up on vinyl this week, but I'll definitely add it to my list to stream and check out. There's also the 10th anniversary reissue of Just Like You by Falling in Reverse coming out this week. So this came out back in 2015. It was their third studio album. It's made out clear with neon pink splattered vinyl. It's going to run about $27. So if you're unfamiliar with Falling in Reverse, they're a post-hardcore band started back in 2008, fronted by probably one of the most hated people in rock music, Ronnie Radke, who was notable for being kicked out of Escape the Fate in 2008 when he was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. But this album continued their rise in popularity across their first three albums. This would debut at number 2 on the Billboard Hard Rock charts, and musically is a little more of a shift back to a more metalcore sound that they had on their debut album. So you got that one coming out this week. And you also got South Park, the 25th anniversary concert, getting reissued this week. So this was an RSD 2024 release. It was a 3 LP release. It's going to run about $41. The RSD release was on blue vinyl. This is going to be on black. It was recorded in August of 2022 at Red Rocks to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the groundbreaking show. The concert featured all the biggest and best known tracks from across South Park's 25 seasons. So Matt Stone and Trey Parker were joined by both Ween and Primus on here. There's appearances by Geddy Lee also. I think Alex Lifeson even makes an appearance on here. A triple album for $41 is not a bad price. I don't know. We'll see if I grab that one this week. There's a couple albums from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers getting reissued this week. The first one was their self-titled debut album from 1976. It's going to about $30. So this is the album that kicked off Tom's incredible career. But the album was largely overlooked for quite a while. It wasn't until 1978 by the time this album started gaining some traction, reached like number 55 on the Billboard 200. And it was really off the strength of two big singles. You had Breakdown off this one and American Girl. Huge tracks that become, two of Tom's best known songs. But outside of those two tracks, there's even better songs off this album. I think this is one of those albums where you kind of go through it and realize how brilliant this album really was. It's a great album. I don't have a copy of it on vinyl. I probably will grab a copy of it this week. You've also got You're Gonna Get It, which was released in 1978. It was their second studio album. It's also going to run you $30. So this album really kind of rode the coattails of their debut album. I think commercially it really helped it right off the bat, even though it didn't have any really big singles off of it. It reached number 23 on the Billboard 200, and this album I think really kind of set up the success that Tom and the band would have over the next several albums. But something I don't think a lot of people know out there is the original name of this album was Terminal Romance. There was a whole different artwork that the album had. I'm not really sure the story behind it, why they changed the title and changed the artwork, but it ended up being an absolute classic in Tom's catalog. So the last 4 albums I got on the list for this week, they're all jazz titles. The first 2 I'm pretty familiar with. They're both really good jazz albums. The second 2, not so much. I think I've heard just a couple of songs between the 2. But the first one was Miles Davis, The Music of Miles. This came out back in 1955. This is part of the Craft Recordings Original Jazz Classic series. These are all cut by Kevin Gray. They're pressed to RTI. They sound absolutely fantastic. If you're looking for jazz titles, this is definitely a good series to follow. This one's going to run you about $28. So this was the first full 12-inch release from Miles' brilliant career. Before this, it had just been a series of 10-inch releases that he'd had. And this album has an incredible version of Night in Tunisia by Dizzy Gillespie on here. And like always, Miles is joined by some of the best musicians of his era. He's got Ray Garland on here, Oscar Pettiford. He's got Philly Joe Jones on drums. It's a great lineup. It is a brilliant album. And this would be an album that would be highly influential in jazz in the late 50s and early 60s. So you got that one coming out this week. Then we also got Miles Davis All-Stars Walkin. This was released in 1957. Same thing, it's part of the original Jazz Classic series. This one's going to run you a little bit more. It's going to run you about $39. Same thing. They're all pressed at RTI. They're cut by Kevin Gray. This album is a little different. So this is a collection of songs that were recorded in 1955. They were released on 2 10-inch releases. So you had Miles Davis All-Stars Sextet, and then you also had Miles Davis Quintet. Those are the 2 releases from this album. You can't say enough about the brilliance of Miles Davis. The stuff he did in the 50s and 60s, yeah. Once he got into the 70s, this might be kind of a hot take, but I was never a big fan of Bitches Brew. And the kind of route he went down musically in the 70s, I wasn't a huge fan of. But his 50s and 60s stuff, you really can't go wrong with it. And because it was recorded over 2 different sessions, he was joined by a big host of great musicians on this one. But he's got Lucky Thompson on here, J.J. Johnson, Horace Silver, Percy Heath, Kenny Clark. I think this is kind of widely seen as one of the best jazz albums of the 50s. And then the next jazz album you got on here is Johnny Hodges and Duke Ellington Side by Side. So this was released back in 1959. This is part of the Verve Acoustic Sound series. These are all pressed at QRP. They're mastered from the original analog tapes. This one's going to run you about $39. So the story with this album is that Johnny got his start playing with Duke in the 20s, and then eventually he would strike out on his own. But this album here, it's billed as with Duke Ellington, but Duke only plays on 3 of the 9 tracks. And for this recording session, a lot of these guys played with Duke back in the 20s and 30s. And they wanted to have this like old school feel to the song. They want to have this like small, intimate feel on these tracks. I think it really does come through on the songs. Like I said, I think I've only listened to 2 songs. It's one I'll definitely add to my list to stream and check out this week. But he's got Harry Sweets Edison on here, Al Hall, Papa Joe Jones, Ben Webster, Billy Strayhorn, a bunch of other great musicians on here. It looks like a good album. Like I said, I've only heard a couple of songs off of it. I definitely need to dig more into this album. And then the last album I got on my list this week is Pharoah Sanders, Lovin' Us All. So this was released back in 1974. This is part of the Verve by Request series. These are all pressed at Third Man Records here in Detroit. It's going to run you about $30. So this is a very different kind of jazz album than a lot of people might expect. So this album, it only has 2 very long pieces on here. The first side of it is Love Is Everywhere, which I know I've heard parts of that one. And then the B side of it is To John. And Pharoah was kind of a protege of John Coltrane, but by the time the early part of the 70s rolled around, he was much more experimental than John would ever be in his career. And I'm not completely unfamiliar with some of Pharoah's work. I have heard some of his stuff over the years. Like I said, I've just never sat down and listened to this entire album. But on here, he's got James Branch, Cecil McBee, Norman Collins, Lawrence Killian on there. It's like I said, it's another one I'm going to add to my list to stream and check out this week. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing this week. I'll definitely stream the new Childish Gambino album and that new Neil Young album. I might grab those 2 Tom Petty releases. I'll probably grab both of those Miles Davis albums also. But I don't know. Record store day was really expensive for me, so I need to kind of cut back and watch what I spend for the next several weeks. But let me know what you guys are looking forward to. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.